Today's episode of the Outline Podcast is brought to you by Audible. Audible is offering the listeners of this show 30 days free and one audiobook. You can redeem this by going to www.audibletrial.com/outlinepod, or you can just click the link in the show notes. All right, let's do this.
Yeah. The Outline with Kevin Dwayne. Kevin Dwayne. Yeah. The Outline. Yeah. With Kevin Dwayne. Yeah. The Outline. Yeah. With Kevin Dwayne. Yeah. This is the Outline with Kevin Dwayne. Kevin Dwayne with Kevin Dwayne.
Hey, you guys, this is the Outline Podcast, and I am Kevin Dwayne with your weekly discussion of all things entertainment, LGBT culture, and a piece of encouragement for everyone. Thank you so much for listening to yet another show. I was out last week, and it was for two reasons. Number one, I was hoping that you all would go over to the Healing Space Podcast and listen to Sensei Raven Ekundayo and Brandon Harris Williams in their 1-year anniversary. They gave about 7 excellent shows last week. They did a show every day of the week. So I wanted to take a break out and have everybody go over there and support them. I'm a big supporter of the show. I love it. I think mental health is very, very important, and it's something that we should all focus on. Everyone should focus on mental health at some point in their lives because we all want to heal, and they're all about healing. So if you haven't checked them out, go listen to them. You have tons of content, and they're taking a break for the month of October. So you have plenty of time to catch up and get in the groove for the next season of the Healing Space Podcast. But another reason why I was out is I was very, very busy. As many of you know, I work a 9-to-5, but I'm also a photographer, and I have some gigs that I do annually because they happen every year, and I'm blessed enough to say that. So I had a really big event last week, and so I was like, you know what? This would be a good time to just step back, focus on this event, get it done, and then come back to the show stronger than ever with content. So that was why I was out last week, but I'm happy to be back because it's perfect timing. Pop culture is kind of weak right now, so I'm not really going to go into that. All I'll say is this. Watch the documentary of Quincy Jones by the name of Quincy on Netflix. It is very entertaining. That man is a legend. I mean, if anything, he gave us Thriller, but there's so much more to him than just that. And it was a very, very well done documentary. So definitely check that out when you have a moment. Other than that, all I want to talk about this week is Insecure. So, this week's episode of Insecure dealt with the concept of ghosting. I'm not going to go in too much detail about it in case there's people who haven't watched the show yet and don't know what's happening. But as an overview, is Issa going through the motions of what it feels like to be ghosted by someone when she thought something was happening with that person. So, when I first watched the episode, I thought it was a weird step away from the other content. I was like, wow, this is filmed differently. There was a lot of internal dialogue. It just moved differently. But it wasn't until like halfway through the show that I was like, oh, I see what they're doing here. They want you to kind of be a part of it. They want you to really get a feeling of what it's like when you are ghosted. And once I figured that out, I was like, okay, no, this is actually very brilliant, because I feel like in one way or another, we all have experienced ghosting, whether we're the people who have done the ghosting or we have been ghosted. But no one really talks about the mental health aspect of that. No one really talks about how that really can affect a person when someone goes from talking to you regularly and then disappears out of nowhere. They no longer talk to you. They've literally gone ghost, and that's why it's called ghosting. And so I really started thinking about that because I've dealt with ghosting on various occasions. I've even been someone who has ghosted on people. But I do also think that there are levels to it. And I believe people should actually discuss the levels. Like, number one, if you go on one date with someone, I truly don't think it's ghosting if you no longer talk to them again. Because it was one date, it's kind of within reason, like, okay, I wasn't feeling it. Conversation is done. I live by the idea of if you ask me for a second date and I'm not interested, I am going to actually tell you in this day and age, me at this age right now, I'm going to tell you I'm not interested. I have screenshots to prove it. If people reach out to me and say, hey, what's good? Can we hang out again? I'll say, you know what? I don't think we're a match. And I wish you the best. I mean, that's in so many words. But I think that's the mature thing to do because you're not leaving someone guessing on what happened or anything of that sort. And you don't necessarily owe that to someone after one date, but it's just respectful. You have to consider what it feels like for someone to really just disappear on you. Now, there's some point in the dating process where that is just not allowed. Like, it's really fucked up. If you literally been getting to know someone, I mean, texting, talking, you've been on, let's say, 2+ dates, and you've really kind of learned about them, it's only respectful to say, hey, this isn't going in the direction that I thought it would go. So maybe we should just see other people and just be cool for now, rather than just saying, okay, I'm not going to respond to their texts anymore. I'm going to block them and do all this stuff, because it really puts you in your head. If you watched Insecure on Sunday, you see the thought process that happens when people go through shit like this. I know for one that it causes me to doubt myself. Like, okay, what did I say? What did I do wrong? Like, then you start replaying a bunch of things in your head. Okay, we were good at lunchtime. We were good in the car. We didn't argue. We hugged goodnight. Why are they not talking? Why are they not talking to me anymore? It causes you to go into this whole spiral and knocks you off of your game. And it's a terrible ass feeling. Now, ghosting, how do I say this? Ghosting works within reason. I believe that it's okay to ghost if you've already told somebody how you feel about something and they're not getting it. For example, I had this guy who I just wasn't feeling anymore. And I told him that. I said, I'm not feeling this anymore. And he's just like, he just would not let it go. He kept coming on to me, I guess he was just living off the Aaliyah try again. If you don't succeed, dust yourself off and try again. And I'm just like, nah, just give that shit up. I'm not playing with you. It's not a joke. I'm not playing hard to get. And I was just like, I'm not interested. But he just kept calling me. He kept texting me. And it was always on some intimate sexual type shit. So I eventually just ended up blocking him. Because I was like, you're not going to stop contacting me. I respectfully told him I was no longer interested. And he just wouldn't let it go. So in that case, I went ghost but it was more or less, it wasn't so much ghost, it was more or less like I told you to leave me alone, and now you're bordering on harassment. So let me just go ahead and cut you off so you can be, on your own. Also, I ghost previous relationships in a way, especially when they first end. I don't know. I'm sure that's probably a terrible thing to do, but I feel like it's important when you've been with someone for a long time. You can't necessarily, no, let me take that back. I don't want to generalize. I don't think it always works when you break up with someone to just be friends. Now, there are people who consciously uncouple, and that's dope. If you're able to do that, if you're able to say, you know what, we work better as friends, and you guys can immediately be friends and be cool, I think that is beautiful. But depending on the makeup of the relationship, you never know what can happen. And I know with my last relationship, so much was going on that when we went our separate ways, I cut off everything. Like, I didn't cut off, I just blocked and removed myself away from access. And then about a year in, I added that access back. because we needed to close that shit out, and I needed breathing space. I needed to just kind of live and process, and I didn't need anything murking the waters. So it was one of those things where I went ghost after a long relationship and then popped back up and was just like, okay, we're good. You moved on. I moved on. We're cordial and we're fine. And everything's all good now. It's no hate. But in that moment, I had to ghost that situation. Other than that, I just think ghosting is trash. It really is trash. Like, I feel like it is cowardly. If you're not feeling somebody after dating them for a while, I'm not talking about one date. We're talking about 2+, hanging out, talking, getting to know one another. Let me work on my speech here, Jesus. But it's only right for you to let them know you're not feeling it anymore. And I know some people think that, well, I don't want to hurt their feelings. They're so nice, or I just don't want to go through the whole process of it. And it's going to be a bruise to my ego to let somebody down, but you actually let them down more when you leave without any explanation, when you don't say anything, when you don't do anything. And as I said, this is not condemning anyone, because I've ghosted before in the past, but it's a terrible feeling, especially to be ghosted. And I actually have a couple ghost stories, as you would say. I remember I was 20 years old, and there was this guy, and this is back in the BGC days, Lord Jesus, Black Gay Chat. That's how you know you're moving up in age, where there's certain social networks that just don't exist anymore. You still have MySpace back then and shit. But anywho, I would see this guy on BGC all the time, but never spoke, never said anything. It was just whatever, right? And I was like, oh, he's cute. Cool. Never pushed it, because back then I was not who I am now. I wasn't forward then. I was very, I hate using the word docile, but I kind of sat back and I kind of just allowed people to approach me, and I kind of just went with the flow of things. I felt like that was kind of like my place or whatever, in a weird way. And so I never hit him up. I just kind of just let it be. So I ended up going to this party, and he's at the party, and the whole night he's staring at me. Like, he's staring at me, and I'm just like, oh shit. But here's the thing, never made a move. Neither one of us made a move. It was just a bunch of staring and shit. And that was just that. But it just let me know, like, okay, so maybe he is actually interested. Like, maybe a day later, he hit me up on BGC and was like, hey, it was good with you. I was feeling you at the party. Sorry I didn't come over and say anything, but I want to take you out on a date. And I'm just like, okay, cool. And I was geeked for this date, because I was like, oh, he's so cute, all this shit. I was super hyped. And so we went on the date. Very lovely time. He paid for everything, showed me a really, really good time. And then we went back to his place. He introduced me to his family that he was staying there. Like, one of his siblings stayed with him, and he also took care of one of his parents. And we had a really, really good time, and we chilled, and we ended up hanging out like for the next kind of few weeks, like just chilling, just on some real low-key shit. Back then, this is before Holistic Tales. This is when things were just getting kind of started, where it's like I wasn't as promiscuous, it was very much like I was young, kind of like, oh, I need to be saving myself for the right one, on that kind of wavelength before I realized these niggas ain't shit. And so I wasn't necessarily just putting out like that. And the story probably would have been different had I put out a little sooner, come to think of it, because hindsight is 2020. But anywho, we dated for a while. And then finally, like maybe, I want to say 2-3 weeks in, it wasn't long. It was never like a long process, but it was never like the first night shit. We ended up having sex. And I remember that shit being painful, because bottoming is not fun for anybody when you first start that shit. It takes a while to build up to actually enjoying it. So whatever. So I remember that being painful, but I also remember kind of just like feeling like, oh shit, like this might be my boyfriend and shit. We might be like a thing and shit like that. But then shortly after that shit, the communication started changing. Like, he stopped responding as much. It started taking longer to respond. I was no longer being invited over. And that shit was starting to kind of get to me. And mind you, I'm 20 years old. This is 12 years ago and some change. And I remember just hitting him up, like, I think this was back in the sidekick days. Yep, I had my sidekick. And I remember just hitting him up and like not getting anything back and being like, what the fuck? And so, or he would give me little breadcrumbs. And breadcrumbing is a thing too. Breadcrumbing is basically when you talk to somebody enough to keep them on the hook. But it's not enough to be like, oh, we are doing something here, but it's enough to be like, I need to keep you here in case I want to chill with you, have sex or whatever. It's like, it's just enough, just dropping little breadcrumbs. And so he would breadcrumb me before it even had a term. And me being young, I would take what I got. And so I remember I did go to a point of kind of craziness of where I was checking BGC to see if he was online, which he was. I would never say anything. Like in my mind, in my 20-year-old mind, I would think to myself, if he sees me online, maybe he'll say something like, what you doing on here when you can be here with me? But that didn't happen. And usually during that, I would text him or something to not get a reply. And the craziest thing I think I did was I drove over to his place. He lived like 10 minutes from me, so it wasn't a big deal. And I drove over to his place, and he had a place where his bedroom window actually faced the street. And I drove over, and it was actually, I think it's sunset. It was after sunset because it was pretty dark. And I could see him in his bedroom. And I was just like, wow, like this is borderline stalker shit. And I was sitting in my car and I'm literally calling him while I am sitting in my car. I see him pick up his phone, look at it, and decline me. When I tell you that shit broke my heart in like several pieces. This wasn't my boyfriend. This wasn't like he didn't owe me anything. And like who I am now sees that. But back then I was just like, how could you do that to me? Like I gave you like my body. We've been chilling. I done met people in your family. Like we've had meals together and shit. Like what the fuck? Like, why are you doing this? You know? And I remember that was just that. So fast forward, he hits me up like, I don't know, like 3 weeks later. I don't know if he saw a picture of me on MySpace or something. You know how niggas do. And he hit me up and was like, hey, you want to go to this pool party? And I'm like, okay, that's cool. So we go to this pool party. And then I couldn't even ride with him. He's like, oh, you're going to ride with my friend. And I knew his friend. So his friend ended up coming to pick me up. And then I rode with him and and it was a good time. So we get to the party. And it's all these guys here. I walk in and I'm like the new guy, or at least they hadn't seen me yet. So everyone is showing me all this fucking attention. So you know what happened next. Now he's pulling me close to him and now he wants me near him and all this shit. Blah, 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 blah. After ghosting me for however long, you know what I mean? And shit like that. And I remember then he all of a sudden wanted to kick it with me again. So we're kicking it again. And then it got to a point where he started doing the same shit. But this time I got to actually call him out on it. This time I played it on some let's be friends shit. And I remember we went out together. We went to like a mansion party or some shit. And I remember like we got back to my car and I don't know, I just started crying. And he was just like, what the fuck are you crying for? And I was like, because you're being such a fucking asshole to me. And I mean, Waterworks going through the whole shit. And he's just like, man, stop all that crying, man. Like, let's just be cool. Like, I'm just not trying to be in a relationship. I'm like, okay, then why did you say that shit from the jump? Like, why are you putting me through all this shit? And then after that, it was just whatever. Like, we ended up being friends. Like, after that, we were literally friends. Like, we just hung out. In fact, I don't want to give too many details about him, but we end up being friends and hanging out and doing all type of shit or whatever. And what's so weird is I saw him do the same shit he did to me to like several other boys like me. And so it was just like, okay, so this is just your thing. This is just what you do. And it was just crazy. But I do remember just the feeling of just defeat and like, damn, did I say something wrong? Did I do something wrong? And sadly, that wasn't the only time that happened. It's happened like so many times, honestly, where you think you're cool with someone and they just kind of disappear out of your life with no explanation, nothing to be said. And there's only a few reasons why. Number one, they were too cowardly and they couldn't tell you the truth. They didn't want to hurt your feelings. Somebody else may have come back into their lives and they didn't want to tell you that they probably had this person there and they never left and now they want to get serious. They don't want to tell you that. Or they're just plain old assholes. They just think it's fun to lead people on and just let it be. I don't know. I don't get it. But on the other hand, I've had my own share of ghosting myself. So here's my ghosting story of when I ghosted somebody. I will not play victim. I will not play victim. I will not play victim. I'm just going to tell the story of how it happened. So there was this guy. I feel like we met on Twitter. Yep. He slid in my inbox on Twitter. And was like, hey, I like your tweets. You're very attractive. I actually live out in California. I'm bi-coastal. I live out there, but I also he lives somewhere else. I don't remember where, but it was on this end, on the East Coast. But anywho, so he hit me up and we were chatting. He was an older gentleman and I could tell that by his photos and stuff, but we ended up just kind of having conversations. So we ended up Skyping, or whatever the webcam thing to do was back in 2010, 2011. That's what we did. I want to say it was like Yahoo Messenger or something, whatever had video then. And so we were video chatting and it was cool or whatever. Like it was chill. We were just talking, like nothing serious. He mentioned that he thought I was attractive and I was like, oh, you're attractive too. Cool. So we're talking, and I remember in the midst of that conversation, I was looking at tickets for Toni Braxton's show. She was coming to, at the time, now it was called the Microsoft Theater, I think, but it was called something else then. Was it Nokia Theater? Yeah, Nokia Theater then. And I was like, yeah, I'm trying to see Toni Braxton, but these tickets are looking crazy, whatever. So I'll just come back later and see what's up. And he's like, oh, okay. So then we started talking about like when he came in town, if we can go on a date. And I'm like, yeah, that's cool. We can go grab dinner or something, cool. So we continued talking like via text message while I was at work and shit like that, having like cool ass conversation. But then I noticed that his messages just felt very serious for it to be so soon. Like he'd be like, oh, I just can't stop thinking about you. And, I see us together and, like this is love. And it was just like more than just I'm interested in you. It was just very, very heavy. And this is like the first week of us talking. And I'm just like, damn, like maybe it's just because he's older. He just knows what he wants. Maybe that's just it. But it was just like, that was that. But he would send me like clips and shit of him singing to like Rock With You. And he would send like unsolicited selfies and shit of himself. And you're just like, okay, like, why are you sending me all these pictures of yourself? It was weird, but I'm just like, whatever. Maybe it's just what he does. Whatever, moving on. So he ends up coming back into town. He's like, okay, so you cool with this date? I'm like, yeah. He's like, okay, cool. Well, since you are cool with the date, I was thinking we go to the Toni Braxton concert. And I'm just like, well, I couldn't afford the tickets, so, I'm going to have to pass. He's like, no, I already got them. Like, you're coming with me. It's my treat. And I'm just like, oh shit. Automatically my mind's like, does that mean I gotta put out though? Like this seems like a setup. Anytime someone does something that big for me or something along those lines that are like more than just a simple dinner and they don't really know me like that, I automatically think like, okay, so you're trying to put a deposit down on the ass. And I mean, it was just one of those weird things where I'm just like, well, should I pay you back? He's like, no, it's just a treat. No expectations, whatever. I'm like, okay, cool. That's that. So we end up going on the date. I wanted to meet him, but he was like, no, I want to pick you up. I'm a big person. I'm a big fan of meeting people because I need to have access to my own car. And I just prefer it. Like, it's just safer to me. But he insisted. So he came and picked me up from my home. We went to... what was the name of that steakhouse? We went to Oh, we went to Fleming's. It was Fleming's because it was all downtown LA. Yep, we were by the Staples Center, Nokia Theater. We went to Fleming's. Very nice dinner. You can tell he knew people there. He knew the chefs. He was talking to people. And I remember that bill coming back and it being like well over $200. I'm just like, oh my God, he is literally going to want to fuck me. Like, I just know he's going to want my legs up somewhere tonight. Like, I just feel it in my spirit. I just like, what? I didn't ask for any of this, but whatever. So we had the dinner and then we get to the show. The seats are so fucking close. I want to say we were in the third row. Like we were so close. And I remember because Garrick, who's been on the show, one of my best friends, he was there. He was doing a story on Tony that night. And he was like, what are you doing here? And I remember I was like, oh, I'm on a date. He's like, what kind of fucking date comes? And it was so funny because he saw who I was with. And the whole time he's texting me like, no, boo, that ain't it. That ain't it. Nah, that ain't it. And like, it was funny because he was sitting not too far behind me. And every time I would turn around, him and another friend that I met through him were looking at me shaking their head like, no, who is this man you with? Like, what is happening? What is going on tonight? And I'm just like, I don't know. It just kind of happened this way. Like, whatever, here we are. So I'm going to enjoy this Tony show. And so we go to the show. And that's that, And so at the end of the night, he takes me home. No funny business. I thanked him. I said, thank you so much. I had a really, really good time. You didn't have to do all of that stuff. And that was really, really great. Like, just know that it can always be simple. Like, we can easily, just go to like Denny's or something. Like, it doesn't have to be like that. Like, he's like, no, it's no problem. That's like a drop in the bucket for me. No problem. I'm like, okay, cool. So after that, this is where things kind of shifted. Now his conversation was on some possessive shit. Like everything was just like some like, okay, you my nigga now. And I'm just like, but I'm not. Like, I'm not. Like, we're still in this process. So the selfies, it went from selfies to like crotch shots. Now, he was still a gentleman, so I never quite got like an all-out dick pic. It would just be him in like some briefs or some shit, or like, like his girth and shit. And now all his messages were like sexual. And I'm like, okay, so yeah, you definitely expect to fuck. But at the same time, as men, it's just what we do. Like, I know that after a while, you're like, okay, so what's good? Like, we fucking, like, I get it. Not really pressed on that part, but it was just kind of like, oh, you amping it up now. But then his conversation was becoming very just like the nigga act like he was like owning me and like, why you need to call me and, oh, you shouldn't be doing that. And I was just like, yeah, I don't know about this. But I don't think I never directly told him. I'm sorry. Did I tell him? I think I told him like, I don't really want anything serious with you. And that's why I was concerned about, the show and stuff like that. Cause I didn't want you to think that you were like buying me. He's like, no, it's not that or whatever. And then I was like, well, I think I'm just going to, I think we should just be friends. At a certain point, it was just too much. And I was like, you know what, let's just be cool and not just be that. But then he started amping up all of his crazy messages, sending me videos. He was singing on my voicemail. In fact, I saved it because I would play it to my friends like over and over again because that shit was hilarious. And that was trash of me because at a certain point, I just stopped responding. And he just kept emailing me. He offered to pay my rent. He offered to pay my car note. There was a singing on the voicemail. He sent hella videos. It was a lot going on. And what's so funny about it is, the last message he said to me was almost like a threat. It was just like, you really should be careful who you ignore and who you play with because, something bad could happen to you. And I'm just like, oh shit. But then that was it. That was the last I heard of him. And mind you, he was talking to himself. I hadn't responded in a while, and he was just going and going and going. And then shortly after that, though, that's when the whole ordeal happened with my parents passing and shit like that. So I completely had forgotten about him and everything. And it wasn't until I moved to Atlanta and I was going through my phone, I was like, oh shit, I forgot about him. But that was a whole ordeal. But that was me ghosting somebody else. And just hearing him kind of like ask what happened and all that shit, it definitely, I definitely kind of felt like, damn, this is fucked up, but you don't understand that I don't want to be with you. So this is the only precaution that I have, but it does suck. And I'm sure I've ghosted other people too. Like, I'm pretty sure I've ghosted a few people that I was dating. Like, you just stop responding. You just stop calling. Or what I've done, that's probably what fucked up, is I just respond to you hitting me up. Like, I'm never going to initiate. So if someone's like, what are you doing? I'll tell you with the period and be very short with it. Chilling, working. Like, I don't keep up an active conversation. It's very dry, short, and just like whatever. I'm notorious for that too. Just being dry as fuck in hopes that they'll just get the point that I don't want to be bothered. But even then, if it's on some dating shit, I'll still have enough nerve to tell you, like, look, I don't see it for us. And I just think we should just let it go. Like, I wish you the best, but we're not a match. And I need you to be okay with that. And that's it, because ghosting is terrible, y'all. It really is terrible. We got to get better at communicating. And I can't even blame social media, because ghosting's been going on since the beginning of time. Like, I was listening to Missy Elliott featuring 702, Beat Me 911. That nigga ghosted her. Like, what's good? Like, can you let me know what's going on? Like, beat me, call me, let me know what's happening. Like, tell me some shit, you know what I mean? Is she the reason you don't come around like you used to? Dusty Shaw, like, ghosting's not new, but it's more prominent now because we reduced all the ways of communicating in person and on the phone. Like, it's all down to text. But I do think that social media makes the shit worse. It makes it harder because you have to literally watch this person continue living their life. And it's a shock to your ego saying, oh, wow, you're doing all this shit, and you're not even considering the person you left behind without letting them know that anything was wrong. And sadly, I've gotten so G at being ghosted that I'm just like, whatever. I go straight to delete the number, block it. I block social media. I do all that shit because I do not want to see you. I need to wash myself free of you. If you don't want me in your life, cool. Let me go ahead and process you not being here anymore. And that'll be that. But I prefer people tell me that they're not interested, and I'll tell them that I'm not interested, because man, it's trash. It's really hurtful. And it can definitely weigh on you not knowing why something ending, especially if it was going so well. But that's that. That's all I got. Thank you all so much for listening to the show. I appreciate you. Please make sure you rate it 5 stars and leave a comment on Apple Podcasts. You can join the conversation by going to SoundCloud and leave your comments there. You can also go use the hashtag The Outline Podcast on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. Tag me, The World of Kevin, or at The Outline Podcast, at Outline Podcast, or just click the link in the show notes. But hit me up. Let me know what you think of the show. Tell me some of your ghost stories. I want to hear your ghost stories. Email them at theoutlinepodcast@gmail.com. I'm sorry. Nope. The Outline Topics @gmail.com. Let me know your favorite ghost stories of when you ghosted someone or when someone ghosted you. How did you feel? What did you do? Did you stalk them? Did you do anything crazy? Let me know the tricks. Did you have a burner profile? I want to know all about it. Let me know. But that's it. You guys have a great week, and I'll talk to you all next time. Peace out.